This is episode 248 of Backpacking America. We have a very brand new camera. Thank you, Sony, for the amazing whatever the fuck this thing is called. I just bought it today. It hurt to buy. It was it was a pretty penny. It's a pretty penny. We'll leave it at that. But today, we're actually, even though we have a new camera and a new setup, we're going back to some classic Backpacking America. We're going to talk about politics. As I take a sip of my coffee, that's much needed. Uh, so today I wanted to talk about immigration, and I saw something today online, and it reminded me of Eric Adams about 2 months ago backtracking on New York City's sanctuary status. So, for those of you that don't know, a sanctuary city is a city or a sanctuary state. A sanctuary city or state is a government municipality that will not cooperate with the federal government to deport illegal immigrants who have settled in that municipality, be it throughout the entirety of the state or in selective counties or cities. What Eric Adams said was he said this on October 2021, right before Texas and Florida decided to fly in or bus in illegal immigrants to New York and New York City. He said we should protect our immigrants, period. Yes, New York City will remain a sanctuary city under an Adams administration. And then within 2 years, Eric Adams reneges this, and he has declared a state of emergency over New York City's immigrant crisis. And he's quoted as saying, "We have not asked this. There was never any agreement to take on the job of supporting thousands of asylum seekers." And he said this many times in different ways where it's not our responsibility. I'm looking into legal options to try and remove our sanctuary city status for New York City. We don't have enough resources to take care of these people. And that's kind of the point that a lot of the Florida and Texas are trying to prove is that, hey, we don't have the fucking resources either, buddy. And we're spending most of the resources trying to keep these people out. Because if we let them all in, all the states aren't going to have the resources. So we're going to bust them to you since you're sanctuary cities because we don't want them. And really, I mean, we were asking for it. Anyone in New York I was pro-immigrant, not pro-immigrant, but pro-illegal immigration, which I was in that camp for a while. I was like, yeah, bring them on. And now, our taxes are going to go up. It's going to cost more money to house these people, to feed these people. We're going to see an increase in sales tax. We're going to see an increase in property tax soon. It's going to be a mess, personally. And this is where I'm going to deviate from the right wing, right? Now, I know some of you that are listening right now are going to say, oh, you're just another right winger. You're an ex-socialist and blah, blah, blah. No, listen. I think that we should keep people out of the country that are not coming in legally. But I also am not aloof to the fact that it takes 10 to 25 years to enter the United States legally, and that the process in between puts you in limbo. There's a lot of cases where if you come to the United States on a visa and you leave the country, you are no longer allowed to return to the United States. Once you leave, you are leaving, and you can't. It's very difficult to get that visa back. So, my solution is if you're going to come to the United States illegally, I think there should be border checkpoints. And by border checkpoints, I mean big Soviet bloc houses, which I mean could be comparable to the shitty, cheap housing that's branded as luxury housing today, uh, all along the border. And they're centers. There's an education center for kids and for people that want to be citizens. And then there's very cheap housing. And it's guarded by the National Guard. The National Guard all along the border. On each border checkpoint, there's one of these cheap apartment blocks with an educational center, place to eat, place to get job training. And then in these centers, right, you're taught how to be an American citizen. You're taught the English language. You're given opportunities to either find a job as soon as you graduate from the facility, while you're also getting checked to make sure you're not a terrorist or a gang member, right? And then while you're going through that process, you're learning a new trade. You're learning how to open a business. You're learning how to work in this country. You're learning about our tax system, about our government, about our history, all these things. For your children, they're getting an education in the English language. and just very simple cultural stuff, historical stuff. I mean, obviously, they're not going to learn a trade if they're under 18. Um, they're just too young. And then the ones that are ineligible, who fail the security background check, get sent back. I don't care what happens to them. Fly them back, throw them back, make them swim back. I don't care. They're bad people if they get rejected. They have criminal history, meaning really bad stuff like they murdered someone, they raped someone, they drugged someone, they're a gang member, they're a terrorist. Send them back. Not my problem. Bye. And then all these people that are coming across the border, most of them, 99.9% of them who are normal people, they get put in these special units. Mhm. And this is how, and then they're able to enter the workforce to become taxpayers, to open businesses, to build things, to contribute to the greater society and to help themselves so they don't have to live in fear of getting deported. Just giving these people driver's licenses and letting them stay here in limbo with no clear path to citizenship or fear of reprisal is not a humane or benevolent situation that the Democrats claim. It's not. It's literally, it's actually very inhumane and torturous. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to that were illegal immigrants that were afraid every day that they were going to get deported. Whereas, they crossed illegally, they should have been put in a center where they were fed, taken care of, examined by a medical practitioner, vetted to make sure they weren't terrorists, and then given an education, job training, business training, and then helped. Said, okay, you're going to move to this town because this town has the resources to help you get started in this country. And this is where you can start your business. This is where you can work. This is where you can send your kids to school instead of just dropping off hundreds of people in the middle of a border town and then dropping them off in a sanctuary city that doesn't even have the resources necessary to house these people. They just say they're a sanctuary. Yeah, you can come here, but there's not enough resources. There's not enough support. And a lot of these people, they work illegal jobs. They live in illegal housing, 10, 20, 30 people to a room, you know, like it's the 1920s and teens. It mimics conditions that my great grandparents and grandparents had to live in when they came to this country. That should not happen. We understand the situation. This is a country built by immigrants. Not saying give these people a free ride, but give them a chance to start fresh and not bust their balls legally at every turn. Because what the Democrats want is to bust people's balls legally. They want to be like, "Oh, yeah, you can come on in for easy political points, but then you're going to get fined if you don't have proper inspection for your food cart." A lot of these immigrants, they sell hot dogs, they sell barbecue, they sell fruits and oranges and water bottles. That's all illegal in New York City. You have to have permits for these things. Well, they don't have permits. They just got to this country. So, how are they supposed to do that? They take the money. The legal robbery. They set them up so they can legally rob them, and then when they're done with them and they get enough strikes against their name, they get deported. That's the Democrat strategy. The Republican strategy is, who the fuck are you? Get out of here. That's not helpful either. Because here's the thing, guys, and I think this is why Roe v. Wade got overturned too. There is a population decline and stagnation in the United States of America and several Western countries around the world. We need to do something about it. Now, we need to do a lot of things about it. First, we need to control the housing market because it's too expensive. We need to make sure that wages rise with productivity. That's another thing. We need to bring people into this country that would be appropriate for this country, i.e., not criminals, having them come in legally, having them come in accessibly. That will boost having those people come in to the United States will help our population problem. We help destroy South America and Central America by funding death squads and right-wing militias. And now all the people are fleeing. They're coming to, the center of the Western world, the United States. To them, this is freedom. And they wouldn't be wrong. I mean, this is a pretty sweet deal. I'm talking to you in an air-conditioned room, um, and I run a business and I do well, and it didn't really take much other than my own effort and having people to support me in that effort, my family. If you can do that, it was easy. I just had to go to the county and file as DBA. It's not that difficult. And for a lot of illegal immigrants that do come here, they do well. Everyone has a job, everyone works, they all live in the same house. Their kids end up doing a little better, then their kids do really well. That's just how it works. Within 3 generations, my family went from absolute poverty, to poverty's a word within 100 years. Within 100 years. So that's 3 generations, right? Now, that's the immigrant ethic. Imagine how beneficial economically it will be if we invested in those people, these newcomers. And instead of just throwing them in here and just letting them figure it out on their own for political points, we genuinely help them. We genuinely say, okay, you're going to be in this little block, and then you're going to go out and you're going to go do this in this town that's ready to accept you. Your LLC is ready for you. Here's some places you could rent. Here's a small business loan, a small business association loan. It's $50,000. Good luck. Here's a business planner that will help you. Getting them in touch with resources and educating them about how to do these things. You know, People come to this country, right? They either work construction, they work landscaping, they work restaurant, or they open a store, grocery store, a pupusaria. I said a grocery store already. A clothing store, a knickknack store, reselling stuff. They opened a fruit stand. Now it's like, okay, well, here's how you get the permit for that. Here's how you open a limited liability corporation. Here's the legal protections for that. Here's where you get your loan from. Here's an agency that has classes on how to run a business, classes on how to plan. Where your kid, you have someone that's in their 20s. It's like, okay, well, would you like to start a college education? Would you like to be a college? Would you like to start college? Would you like to do a trade? Here's trade school. We'll have a trade school right here for you and teach you a trade and then connect you with the union. Or, okay, you want to be college educated. Okay, let's make sure you're English proficient and, you know, get you arranged to go to a college after we do your background check. Give these people a path. We are not giving people even remotely close enough to a chance to um do this. We're not giving people a chance. And that's the thing, like, the Democrats and the Republicans too, they're both hypocrites, they're both scumbags. But it just kinda cracks me up with the Democrats because they champion themselves, and I guess what bothers me about the Democrats is they champion themselves as the party of humanity and freedom and all things good and nice, and then they do horrible things. I mean, you know, the Republicans don't champion themselves as that. They champion themselves as the party of liberty and freedom and America. And, I could list off so many reasons why they are not for that. But what really pisses me off is because I come from the socialist side of politics, the Democrats really are a horrible, horrible, horrible party because they go against the core values of what socialism used to be. And sorry, I just got a very interesting text message. I love being single in the 21st century. It's great. Um, so anyway, as I was saying, they're the party of pretending to be humanitarian. And like with the immigration example, like for what I just said about immigration or economics, right? They're part of the welfare state. Socialists don't believe in the welfare state. They believe in the workers owning the means of production, creating their own enterprises and collectively running them together with cooperation and democracy in the workplace. Here they'll give you a stimulus check to pretend to stimulate the economy when it really just hyperinflated the dollar and now interest rates are at 7%. That's the problem with the Democrats. They have band-aid solutions where they'll just throw money at a problem or buy votes to get ahead, but they're not actually concerned about enacting true social and economic reform. Instead, they're in it for politics. Or think during COVID, where people that didn't get a vaccine were villainized, and I fell victim to this too. And I apologize for that. Or if you didn't wear a mask, you were a piece of shit. I remember, for example, in New York State when the um, more luck than brains just said hi in the chat. How you doing, buddy? Um, I remember during with the mask thing when masks were removed, they weren't required in New York State anymore. New York State said, nope, you don't need them. And they're like, oh, I actually need to remask. And when I had to remask, I literally was so confused because I'm like, well, now we're fine. Why do we have to remask again? And then you didn't have to mask, and then you had to remask again. And I just like, I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do I was so angry. I remember once I went into a McDonald's and I'd like to apologize to the workers there too because, they had to hear this, but the guy was like, "Yo, yo, 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 you can't be in here without a mask." And I was just like, I genuinely forgot it. And I was pissed off at that time too because I was like, I can't believe we have to wear these things again. And then I said to the guy, I says, "I'm just in here to get a large fry. Like, can I just get a large fry? You got to go around the drive-through." And I said, "Honestly, dude, if I get in that car, I'm going home. Like, I just got out of the gym, bro. Like, I really didn't want to deal with it." And I said, "I'm going home." And then he said, "Well, that's not our problem." And I'm like, you know what? You guys are the problem. This is why this country's going to hell. This is ridiculous. I said something towards those lines. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I just wanted a large fry, man. I kicked the door open and I stormed off. And I feel bad for the people that are on the receiving end because they're working in these conditions, and that was a very scary time to be working. I worked in a gym during COVID. I had people, when I told them to wear a mask, they followed me around the gym, or they called me the nastiest words they could come by. Told someone to wear a mask in a Walmart when this first started, and someone pulled a knife on me. So I understand their end of it, where it's like, oh God, another crazy person. Um, but it was at that moment, when that second time to remask came, that I felt so irritated, and I was like, "Okay, now I'm starting to see why the Republicans are saying this is like a power ploy." And I just was like, "Fuck this," like, I couldn't deal with it. And the then I saw someone proposed a law in the New York State Assembly, and it was to detain people in concentrated centers. And I actually did a podcast on this a while ago about it. Assembly Bill something, I forgot what it was. Where they said that anyone that is suspected of having COVID, came in contact with COVID, or has COVID-19 would be removed from their home and placed in a medical camp, quarantine center is what they called it. And they will be indefinitely detained until um, decided upon by a medical examiner. I want you to just really think about what I just said. Indefinitely detained. Not okay, and I wouldn't even be okay with it even if they said you're going to be detained for 5 days until we can, verify that your symptoms are good and then you're gone. No, indefinitely. So if you're a political dissident, which I was at the time, and I still am, because no matter where I am on the spectrum, I'm either seen as a libertarian or a communist, or just something that can't be put in a box, that freaks people out. I can't be put in a box. Which is why I refuse to work for people anymore, because I'd rather own my own business and decide how I want to do business and how I want to make money on my own time and schedule, and with my own morals and ethics, rather than be subservient to an agenda. So anyway, no matter where I am in this world, I can't fit in a box. So at the time, I was heavily involved in the socialist movement, and socialists and Democrats don't get along, contrary to popular belief, nor do Republicans, nor do Republicans and socialists, obviously. Although for some reason Republicans like me better than Democrats. It was really weird. That's a whole other podcast topic. But in the short of it, um, anyone that's in charge, whether it be a Republican was in charge of those camps or a Democrat, they could use that to silence their opposition, or people they thought were just bad people or that they didn't like. Um, you could call your neighbor, you could call cops on your neighbors and say, "Oh, they have COVID-19 and they're all sick in that house," and then boom, they're done. There's no court, there's no proceeding, there's nothing. You're indefinitely detained. That is terrifying. Now, last I heard from an unknown assemblyman in New York, that person that advocated for that bill, who's been doing it since 2014, by the way. They've been doing that since 2014. They've been pushing that bill since 2014. That one person has been sent to be the ambassador to Jamaica. The ambassador to Jamaica. I had no idea New York specifically had an ambassador to Jamaica, but we do, and it is that person. And good riddance. Enjoy Jamaica, because you are never allowed in this state again. And now for Republicans, a lot of Republicans in power will advocate for free speech or for um, protecting children or traditional family values. And they go against this in free speech. They will say, we're for free speech. And then, during the Trump years, we saw people that didn't agree with the Republicans it was encouraged that we give them that they were given no quarter, that they were enemies of the state, enemies of the people, that they were insane and they should be treated as such, that it's okay to attack them. Like for example, with transgender people, gay people, socialists, communists. I remember when Charlottesville happened, it was celebrated when that Dodge Camaro drove through that group of people and killed Heather Heyer. I mean, that was a horrible thing. That was horrible. That was a peaceful protest. They were marching in the streets, and boom, protesters getting shot was enjoyed. Protesters getting ran over was celebrated. That was horrible. you know, people, and then you have Republicans over here saying, oh, we believe in free speech. Well, you're celebrating that. You're saying, oh, good. Or you're not calling that out as, hey, this isn't what free speech, that's free speech. You should be allowed to say that and do that. We are about protecting children and then, or traditional family values. And I forgot the guy's name. He was the guy in the wheelchair. Um, Not Dan Crenshaw. It was the other guy. There was this guy in Congress, Republican, disabled, and he was cross dressing. He was cross dressing while he was in his wheelchair, and there was a video of him getting oral sex from one of his male staffers in his car, and how many Republicans have been found on Grinder, and how many Republicans have cheated on their wives. I'm not saying the Democrats don't do these things either, but it just goes against the point they're trying to make. What I'm saying is that when I critique both of these parties, and my anger with it is that they're both projecting they're both projecting their insecurities and their failures as men and women onto the public by advocating for these lofty moral causes. What I say to people is, look at what politicians are screaming the hardest about, because that's what they're the guiltiest about. They are guilty of the things they're most passionate for. So that's just usually how I look at it. Now, I think personally, from the perspective of the show, right, and how it's backpacking America and exploring things, I think that our solution should be commonsensical and run by working people and unions. I'm not talking about union leadership, because a lot of those guys are bought out or corrupted. I'm talking about the rank and file unions. I'm talking about the shop stewards. I'm talking about the guys that are on the line every day working their ass off, freezing and sweating and dying, building this fucking country. I'm talking about people like me, people like you, the viewer, people like the small business owner, the shop owner, the fish market owner, the fisherman, the farmer, the small farmer, the real estate agent, the auto shop owner, the mechanic, um, the postal worker, all these people, you know, are the real America. These are the people that should be running the country, not the lofty elite that you can't touch and you'll never see in public. I'm talking about me and you, the American people. And it's just very concerning that that is seen as insane. We need a libertarian and a socialist approach merged into one, where we can both coexist in one sphere and be united on, how we run the country. Even if we have disagreements, it's more, we need to realize that we're not enemies. We just think differently. And the problem is that this country is being pushed towards civil war by the media and by the politicians. And this is another thing. The politicians scream for these lofty ideals, and then they do the most corrupt shit possible when it comes to media. And this is why I love independent media, because if I said this in legacy media, if I said this at CNN, if I was on camera at CNN or at Fox News, or I was writing in a newspaper, or I was talking on a radio station in a big corporation, and I said all this, that's your opinion. It's not fact. The fact is what the rich guy says that's funding us. Fact is what the Western leaders are saying. The fact is what, you know, our advertisers want. Those are the facts. But what I'm saying, and it is my opinion, but it's informed opinion. I have sources that could back all this shit up. I have, I can write a whole 10, 20-page paper about the things I just said and specifically list, you know, uh, so and so did this on this date and this, and then make it, this is my opinion. Here you go. But no, that's an opinion to people. I mean, that's opinion to people, even though it may be factually true that I have sources for these things. Um, it just doesn't suit a narrative. And that's the problem with the media and with politicians being in bed with each other. Now, when corporations, so let me drink my coffee because it's about to get real. When corporate businesses, right, start cooperating with the government and they work hand in hand to create an entity that pushes an agenda, and they work together to build a government that has a set agenda that's agreed by the businesses and the corporations together in a united front effort to move the country forward. That is fascism. It is true. It has been said by Mussolini, and it is said by his predecessor, which I forgot his name. I think it's Giovanni, the forefather of fascism. That is genuinely what fascism is: the unity between corporate business leaders and the government together to create a state that is united on the basis of promoting the development of the biggest corporations in the country and the government, and then move forward on a policy objective they both agree on. That is fascism. Do I think we have that in the United States? No, but we're heading in it because not every big corporate leader is on board with the United States government. There, Donald Trump, for example, multi-billionaire. He's like, this is insane. We got to change all of this. Elon Musk, I don't want anything to do with government. I think people should be able to do what they want. Jeff Bezos has really nothing to do with the government. He just wants to mail you packages and make people piss in bottles because he's a narcissist. Bill Gates, yeah, he's crazy. Um, but if you look at China, I don't think China's communist. I think China is fascist because the business leaders have a major say in the government. Or at least China is very close to fascist because when it comes to China, they killed their billionaires. They're like they assert themselves as like, "Oh, you're getting out of line. We're going to whack you." But if they get a little lax, they're playing a dangerous game. If they get just a little lax, and they stop doing that and they stop punishing the business leaders, and the business leaders and the government just have a very neutral working together, it's fascist. It's very fascist. So they're so close. They're so close to being fascist, closer than us. And it's dangerous. The thing that we have that separates us apart is our constitution and the people that are so unruly and so rebellious that when we're pushed to the brink, the government knows what our limits are. They know that we take a lot of shit, but when we've had it, we've had it. And we had it in the summer of 2020. We took over cities, we bombed police stations, we shot National Guardsmen, we occupied roadways, even down here on Long Island. William Floyd Parkway, Montauk Highway, and Sunrise Highway were all occupied. Going east by Mastic and Shirley. They were all occupied. No cars, no ambulances, no nothing could get through. They were like, we're just shutting this shit down because we're pissed off. And that's what they did in Seattle and in Portland. People, you wouldn't think people had guns there. People were poking guns out of their window and popping shots at police and National Guardsmen. I mean, you know, the country lost it. The country lost it then. And I'm just saying this because, and I'm not saying this is, I'm not endorsing violence or saying this is necessarily a good thing. All I'm saying is when it comes down to it at the end of the day, the people here are unruly and we are the safeguard between fascism and democracy, the people, because the people said, "Yo, we've had enough." Now, I'm not saying again, I'm not condoning violence. There was a lot of violence, and that wasn't good either, and that's not really something that should be celebrated. But what should be celebrated is the American people's tenacity to prevent such things from happening in the future. Even though if you look at the binary, right? You have Democrats on one hand and Republicans on the other hand, and while the ideologies of both parties are really antithetical to liberty. The people that register as Democrat or Republican and believe in those causes are generally very libertarian, or they have an innate sense to preserve democracy. They both want to preserve democracy. It's only the people in power that don't want to preserve democracy and see it as a roadblock to acquiring more power and more money. And that is, my major problem with our government is because they don't believe in democracy. The people do. So I like to highlight on this show the people, the whole people, and why, our involvement is important and how us being involved in peaceable means can prevent something like 2020 from happening again. So when it comes down to, like, for example, if you're a union member, instead of going on strike for better wages, which important, don't get me wrong, money's important. But maybe you say, okay, well, you know what? We really don't like all this money getting sent to Ukraine. We should go on strike to demand that the United States government does not send money to Ukraine. We should go on strike to demand that immigration be reformed. We should go on strike to demand the equal treatment of black people and women in the workforce. Using social causes as well. Not saying that economic causes should not be celebrated, but diversity of tactics and, advocating for the respect of our first, second, third, and fourth amendments, because those are all amendments that have been trampled on in recent years. Advocating for, you know, adding things to the Constitution, even if you want to add an amendment to the Constitution or remove one. The people need to, we also need to realize that our labor is important and that withholding our labor withholds production, and production is absolutely necessary for the United States to function, for any society to function. And withholding that labor is dangerous to any society. So, you know, organizing and then unions backing other unions. If the nurses union goes on strike, the teachers union should go on strike because they're both workers. They're both going to need each other. If you only have one union going on strike and the rest of the world's working, the strike, not that it doesn't get things done, but it doesn't send a strong enough message. Now, if one union goes on strike and 35 unions go on strike just to support them, then it's 100% chance of success because now you have all these different industries shutting down. The employer will be forced uh, because other employers are going to be like, yo, get your shit together. We're not even involved. And our guys are on, so you must be fucking up. That's one way to promote democracy through peaceful means. And that's even getting, attacked by the right wing. That's something that's dangerous too. The Republicans say we believe in the freedom of speech, which means the freedom to organize and have assembly, and yet they want to crush unions. With Ronald Reagan for as a prime example. That's why I think the PRO Act by President Biden is such an important thing because the PRO Act protects you when you're actively unionizing. Now, what does all this have to do with immigration? Immigration is obviously the centerpiece of what we were talking about today, but it goes into the larger topic of what is political corruption, what is, what is narcissism, what not narcissism, but like, with that tweet that I quoted with Eric Adams, right? Where it's where he said, "Oh, we're a sanctuary city, and we always will be too. Oh, we don't have the resources. Sorry, we can't do it anymore." It's grandstanding for political points. That's the larger topic that can be that would need about an hour and a half to cover solidly. So I just choose to cover it in bits and pieces. The immigration debate is part of that larger discussion of politicians enacting policies such as a sanctuary city policy and then reneging on it when they actually have to come to terms with it, or just letting it lapse into decay and letting the local municipalities struggle to enact it because that's what it is to the law. That is the biggest problem that we are facing in this country. Is our own government not having the political will to govern. So that's why the people need to take up that great responsibility since it's already being thrusted into our laps anyway. That is the main point of this episode, but also the entire topic of governance. So when it comes to bring it back to immigration, and the reason why I'm also talking so much too is because I really wanted to see if this camera would do that annoying thing where it shuts off after half an hour, which it did not do, and I'm very happy about that. So this is the camera to go to. Um when it comes down to it, to get back to immigration, we need to reform our border. Yes, we need armed guards on the border, especially up north in Canada. The same thing I suggested for the southern border, for having um, those apartment blocks, schools to teach children, and educational centers for adults that want to become citizens into the country, as well as a place to eat and for medical examination and criminal background investigation. Needs to be all across the border in the north and the south, because illegal immigrants also come through the north or go through the north into Canada. So we absolutely need to secure the northern border, and that is a border that is very porous and that is never talked about. And none of these borders, none of these militarized borders should be to show hostility towards anyone, but to for protection. It shouldn't be hostility towards the Mexican government or the Canadian government, even though they probably will take it that way. It's really just to secure our borders from uh, being destroyed. So it's absolutely essential that we do that. Anyway, this was episode 248 of Backpacking America. Thank you for listening to me talk about this topic, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. So make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and just comment under the reel or the full video and let me know what you think, because your thoughts are very valuable to me and I like having a discussion with you guys. Anyway, this has been episode 248. Thanks again for listening to Backpacking America, and see you guys tomorrow at 6